Credibility is like the speaker's spirituality. That means without the soul of credibility, the speaker does not exist. So you'd ask me, why is credibility so important in our presentation? Have you heard about a few words like authenticity, integrity? And all of these things come from the mother word persuasion. And because I consider every speech as a persuasive speech, though we have the frameworks of speeches, we speak to inform, we speak to entertain, and we speak to persuade, and then finally to instruct, like what we are doing. But in the crux of it, every speaker has a responsibility to persuade the audience to their point of view so that the audience can take action. Now, if the audience and the speaker do not establish that connection and there is no credibility of the speaker, why would the audience listen to you? And goes back to our first point, when we prepare speeches, we ask, what is the audience do with my message? So it all ties down to the message. I'll share with you some statistics, some interesting statistics. So let's see some mind-boggling statistics from the UNESCO did a study of 500 influencers across 40 countries. In this study, they went with all the influencers, saying how are you sharing information, and just look at the numbers. 66% of influencers don't fact check. And influencers means us speakers as well. We are in the world of influencing. 66%, that means more than half of the influencers give information without doing any fact check. 42% of influencers decide to share something or not based on the other person's social media metrics. And then 21%, that means almost one third, share content because it was shared by my friend whom they trust. And finally, look at what happens to the audience. There's a world of mistrust happening. 71% of consumers regret for the purchases they have made just by watching an influencer video or some statistics shared. Now, this is quite critical is what it does to the audience. And once the audience disbelieves in what the influencer speaks, it takes a lot of time for the speaker to start building the reputation back and put it back into the trust. You have heard that same thing, right? You have heard the saying that it takes a lifetime to build your reputation, but it takes a second to lose it. And credibility goes along with the same way. But what is credibility? And why should I care? Credibility is the trust that the speaker I'd say, has that impacts the audience. That is credibility. That trust matrix. Say, for example, I have 5 of you turned up for this particular session. That means I, as a speaker, have some credibility. That's the reason you are turning up every single week listening to my content. If we don't have the credibility, of course, people can be busy. If I, as the speaker, don't have the credibility, you tell, I better watch a YouTube video, or I can just do Chat GPT, find my answers. Why should I come and spend my time, spend this 30 minutes and listen to you? That is the speaker's credibility. We go to the some of the values or some of the core concepts of credibility. And we discussed in the beginning, trust, integrity. Is it real? And then it moves on to the next 3 pillars of expertise, authenticity, and finally authority. So it starts with trust. And these are the levels of credibility. It starts with trust and then it goes into authority. Authority means you, as the speaker, have complete command and control about your message and how the audience perceives your message. So you make the audience feel the way you are feeling. Influence authority means it's not like I will tell you something and you do it. It is. It goes back to Aristotle. Because I'm an Aristotelian, if that's a word. I am a fan of Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher. He discusses this triangle, and I keep coming to the triangle. And in his book, Rhetorics, he has written these three pillars: ethos, pathos, and logos. Speaker, message, and the audience. And credibility is actually the ethos, means one of the core pillars of persuasion. So, if we go back to the triangle, we have the speaker and the audience, and the relationship between them establishes the channel of credibility. And it also goes down to how ethical, and because ethos is the root word of ethics, how ethical are we in presenting our presentation? Now, you would ask me, okay, I now understand. Now, can you tell me how can I build my credibility as a speaker? Let me say something like this. It is absolutely simple to build your credibility. Absolutely. We have been building our credibility all our life. Let's build it. Number one, we know our topic inside out. That means, remember our six pillars of credibility? The last pillar was authority. That means when I speak about a topic, that means I am the authority figure in that particular topic. So what that means is I go back to my sources, I do my research, and then present certain facts, which then is I then piecemeal into a digestive manner, so then the audience just receives it. Two, practice sincerity. And this is this is overlooked in our presentations. So many times we tend to, we attempt to become somebody else and present in a certain manner. But this is practicing sincerity goes down to the other pillar of credibility, that is your core authenticity. That means if I give a message, I don't believe in my message and I have to go and give a message. If I don't believe, how can I expect my audience to believe in the same message? You'd have a congruency. And we have heard about the term, since childhood. We have to walk our talk. That means if I give a message on integrity and the other time you find me stealing funds from somewhere else, that means it totally destroys my credibility, just that instance. Or if I make a lame joke about somebody, say I make a joke of somebody handicapped or make a very racial joke, then it impairs the, that means I'm being insincere to, you say the other time you gave a speech on everybody's universal, and now you are making racist jokes. There's an incongruency. So practicing sincerity, that means whatever speeches we present, and speaking is my philosophy of exploring myself. And when every single speech that you write is actually a part of you, you're telling to the audience. And if that part of you, your actions are actually a bit different from what you are saying, that creates, I think that destroys the credibility, is it not? And the last thing is cite sources. So many of the speakers do not cite sources. I'll give you an example. I heard there was a study, and I'm just giving you an uncited source. Studies say that 90% of speakers in public speaking are nervous. And yeah, quite generic. But where did I get the numbers? Did I do a study or did I cite any study? When we make such generic statements, the other statement people make is latest studies shows that Donald Trump is not so popular in his in the US. Now, you see, these are all ambiguous statements. And when we do not cite sources, we do not cite that particular study, that means my research is based on Instagram's posters rather than my deep research of getting to study, getting to understand, and then matching it. So go to the hard yards and cite the sources. And how do you cite sources? I just did. I did with the first slide, UNESCO. I mentioned the date. I mentioned the time. So that means in a speech, of course, like text, you cannot put in, now go to http dot 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 and go to this URL. You just mention your source and the time when it was studied. And if you have understood to build the credibility, I also opened up some parts of the study. Say, for example, I used there was a study done by UNESCO in November 2023. They interviewed 500 influencers and got these statistics. So once we cite sources, that just not makes your message believable. You are already working so hard preparing your speech. But when you add that extra oomph by adding that belief system, by putting in the numbers, that means your statement is actually a fact. So that means the emotional impact, you're already into the emotional bandwagon. Your emotional impact on your audience is 10 times, and again, I've not studied, but it has a higher chance of impacting our audience than just mentioning latest study show that based on an Instagram or a LinkedIn post. Now, we know these three things we should do, and I have three things that we should avoid like the plague. We should just avoid it. One, do not exaggerate facts. We can round some numbers, but then if we exaggerate some of the facts, then the audience, if they happen to see another slide or listen to somebody, they might have questions and they might have doubts in mind. Anshuman told me that this was the study of UNESCO, but actually UNESCO is just giving some different numbers. So that means it has destroyed my entire credibility of my presentation. So next time when I invite you for a presentation, you will come forcibly, and even if you are in the audience, you will not listen to me. Avoid ambiguity. So that means what we do is, as I said, latest study, and this word latest, or if you have heard common sense, science say that, and if we have heard many influencers, our YouTube videos watching that, scientific studies state that eating healthy is so important for us. Which science? What study? There's absolutely no context. And knowingly, I, have the speaker, created ambiguity in my presentation. Now imagine you just cite your study like we did the citation and remove all the ambiguity and make it crystal clear. I asked myself how do I avoid ambiguity apart from using these words? I asked myself, if I have a 15-year-old, will they understand my message? And if it is complex, that means I need to make it more clearer. It did not be that detailed, but I need to make it clearer. So ask yourself, and this also goes back to what we consume. Next time when you watch an Instagram post or LinkedIn post, stop and just ask, is it believable? Has the author cited sources? Where are these coming from? And if they're not coming from, immediately block that particular person or just scroll to the next post. Do not believe uncited sources or ambiguous posts. And the last bit is avoid taboo topics. Now, we at Toastmasters attempt to avoid the taboo topics. The 4 taboo topics, we have race, religion, sex, politics. We attempt to avoid that. Now you'd ask me, but somewhere I have to speak, right? Yes. Say, for example, if you are into stand-up comedy, they certainly bring it on, but it depends on our goal of persuasion. If I use these topics, and if you have observed in one of my previous sessions, I mentioned, yes, we should polarize our audience, but at the same time, polarizing an audience from your point of view, which might be strong opinion. But if we avoid these four topics, race, religion, sex, race, religion, sex, and then politics. If we avoid it, it avoids conflict because, yes, people can have strong opinions, but at the same time, that might not be the platform to discuss or persuade. It's different if you are a politician, you don't avoid this, or if you are into, say, feminism, then you have to bring in the gender aspect. But in general, your audience might not buy into these. And finally, just remember that your credibility follows you even when you are not speaking. What does that mean? That means whatever you present, you're actually walking your talk, literally. So that means every time you show up in your Toastmaster meetings or you show up in the office, just carry your messages with you. Just believe in your core messages. And if we just take care of these facts, which are pretty simple to follow, you start building that volume of credibility. And when you start building your credibility, suddenly you go into such higher pinnacle of your authority that later on, if you want to influence certain people, you don't need an hour to influence. Just a 5-minute conversation, and people are buying into what you are saying. You go to your Toastmaster club, any presentation that you give, you carry your credibility with you. Even when you're not speaking, you start building that. We call it the aura, right? A presence. You carry your presence with you. And when you carry your presence with you, you start people start observing that I don't have scientific facts to prove it, but I felt that there is a different way of confidence with the way you speak, the way you convey, the way you greet. It all adds to the volume of credibility. So, I'll summarize. We discussed credibility. We discussed the UNESCO's findings on how influencers share. We discussed what things we should do to build our credibility. That's so good. And we also discussed 3 important things that we want to avoid like the plague. And in the end, we discussed how do we walk our talk and why it is so important. And this credibility thing helps to move your speaking skills that you're learning at your club into your office, into your families, into conflicts, into any way that you go. You as the speaker are carrying a volume of credibility, and nobody can deny it.